Hi there, welcome. We appreciate everyone joining us here today for this SentinelOne webinar. I'm so pleased to have Sochi and Melissa from SentinelOne presenting on Curiosity Didn't Kill the Cat, Cultivating a Culture of Performance. My name is Lynn Dome. I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by acronym WiCyS, and we spell that WiCYS and pronounce it WiCyS like we sisters, because that's exactly what we are. We are a cyber sisterhood. And our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. We do so by creating opportunities. Since we have over 5,400 members and with representation in over 70 countries, we have a beautiful online member forum where all our members can network and connect. Within our online member forum, we have special interest groups like Latinas in cybersecurity, data privacy, cybersecurity law, military spouses in cybersecurity. You name it, there's a conversation to be had within the member forum. We also have skill development training programs like the Security Training Scholarship made possible by Google, Bloomberg, and Meta. We have a veteran apprenticeship program, an internship program. Target just launched our cyber defense challenges. We have all that and so much more available on the site, WiCyS.org. We have newsletters and webinar series. We also have scholarships, grants, and awards, not only to our conference, but other conferences as well, which, by the way, our conference will be coming up in 2023, March 16th through the 18th in Denver, Colorado. We have a cyber talent emergency fund, many different speaking and media engagements, apprenticeship programs, leadership summits, mentor-mentee program, all that and so much more. And we owe all that thanks to our a special thanks to our strategic partners, SentinelOne, who is presenting here today, and then AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Fortinet, Google, Intel, Lockheed Martin, Meta, Microsoft, Optum, AbbVie, JP Morgan Chase & Company, LinkedIn, McKesson, Navy Federal Credit Union, Nike, Wayfair, Workday, and all our tier 3 partners as well. And so I encourage everyone, since we have Sochi and Melissa here from SentinelOne doing this fabulous presentation, that this is your time to get your questions answered. And at the bottom of your screen, there is that chat functionality for you to post your questions, and they will be answered live at the end of the webinar. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the WiCyS newsletter. You can find us everywhere on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We have a strong LinkedIn community. We also have Twitter, Instagram, on YouTube, and all the social platforms. But our newsletter is the one-stop shop where you'll never miss a beat with all our initiatives and programs. You'll receive information on when they're getting launched. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and pass the mic on over to Sochi and Melissa, and they're going to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Lynn. We're so happy to be here, and welcome everyone to Curiosity Didn't Kill the Cat, Cultivating a Culture of Performance. Today, we'll be learning just how important curiosity is to creating a workplace that is gender equal, and how through curiosity we can advance ourselves and others around us. As Lynn mentioned, my name is Melissa, and I am joined by my colleague, Sochi.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I just want to say, first and foremost, I am so excited to be in a virtual room with so many cybersecurity queens and kings, because let us not forget that we are the queens and kings. And as such, we are the ones with the power to bring the change that we see necessary into the cybersecurity industry. As Melissa mentioned, we will be talking today about the power of curiosity and how it can foster inclusion within the workplace and beyond. But before I get into that, I actually want to ask you a quick set of questions about me. And they're going to be 3 yes or no questions. You can either grab a piece of paper and a pen if you have that readily available to you, or just remember your responses to the questions. All right, are we ready? So, am I the first person in my family to go to college? Yes or no? Do I have children? And lastly, do I own a cat? All right. Please put down your pens and let me just go through the responses of these questions. So, I am the first person in my family to go to college. Could it have been my foreign sounding name, or maybe it was my lack of accent that had you choose yes or no? For the second question, I do not have children. Was it that I maybe looked too young? And the last one, for a cat, I do not own a cat. And did you choose yes or no because I seemed eccentric, or maybe not eccentric enough to fit the cat lady stereotype that we all have? So as we just experienced in this quick activity, we all have unconscious biases, which influence how we perceive others around us. Our brains make these assumptions about the world around us because there's so much information coming at us at a single time. For example, did you know that at any given second, our brain can only consciously process 40 bits of information? Yet we receive 11 million bits of information every second. So needless to say, our brain needs to take these cognitive shortcuts to process all this information, or creating these biases because it needs to process everything quickly. Now, the kicker about all of this is that the mental model creating these shortcuts or biases is driven by our own life experiences and our own cultural conditioning. And for that reason, that is why curiosity is exactly the foundation that we need in order to create a more equitable and inclusive world around us. Because when we are being curious, we are not being
judgmental.
Exactly. So with that now in place, and now that we understand how we can offset our biases, we need to start looking at what else we can do. So let us start from a place of curiosity, and I'm going to pass it over to Melissa to give us a little bit more information about what curiosity is.
Thanks, Sochi. Let's talk about what is curiosity. And what comes to mind when you first think of the word? I think of cats and children, often both seeking to understand new things and constantly get into good trouble. Curiosity is defined as the impulse to seek new information and experiences and to explore new possibilities. Those shortcuts or biases that Sochi was speaking about, the ones that we have been conditioned to assume, they can be avoided simply by being curious about one another. By seeking new information on a situation or person, we can avoid those biases and assumptions. The best part is that curiosity is something we can all cultivate and practice. Individually, as we embrace curiosity, it allows us plenty of opportunities for our careers to advance and for us to grow. Collectively, curiosity can bridge gaps by connecting new people and solving complex problems. In the now famous words of Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. And if you don't know who Ted Lasso is, I highly recommend you Google this quote. And his point is, if we're being curious, we'll ask questions. Questions like, Sochi, why is being curious so important in the workplace?
Well, let me tell you, having curiosity within your team is like a superpower. In a 2021 report by SAS, the organization was able to quantify the astonishing impact of curiosity. For example, managers said that when curiosity was fostered within a team, it led to an increase of 58% job satisfaction and an astonishing 62% increase in productivity. And who here doesn't want a high-performing and happy team? So let's get into how each of us can foster curiosity in our teams through a little quick informative activity that Melissa will lead.
All right, everyone. I'll ask you to participate in a quick activity that will help you foster a more high-performing team through inclusion the minute you get back to work or school. If you could please grab that piece of paper and pen you had before. And if you don't have one, just open a Word document. 1, 2, 3, 4 will be 4 questions. In rapid fire style, I'll ask you those 4 questions about your team, whether that is your team at work or a recent team you're working with at school. In each quadrant, you will put the names or initials of the 3 team members in your workplace that come to mind. You're going to have 10 seconds for each. Let me get my phone out so I can count your seconds. All right, ready? Question number 1. Who on your team do you advocate for the most? Question number 2. Who on your team do you know most about outside of work or school? I need some little music here. Keep us entertained. Question number 3. Who on your team do you engage in small talk before meetings the most? And last question. Who do you have the most conversations with about career goals and aspirations? All right, everyone. You can put your pens down. Do not make any changes. At this point, you may be looking at as many as 12 names or as few as 4. This by no means is a rating on inclusion, but a conversation starter with ourselves on how our unconscious bias may be impacting our teams. It is important for us to ask ourselves, what do the repeats names share in common with me? Is it communication style, background, education? Are there people that didn't make it on the list? If so, what assumptions am I making about these individuals? Through the self-assessment, you'll realize who's in your in-group or people that you have shared similarities with. It's not uncommon. Since we were born, we've been creating in-groups to form communities and trust. However, it is critical that we ask ourselves, what biases are we cultivating? And how can tapping into our curiosity release us from those biases and create a more inclusive workplace? Think about what assumptions we made about Sochi in the beginning. Let's break the bias by asking questions instead.
Melissa, you just dropped the mic on that one. By this point, we understand that we all have biases, as you kind of just covered. And now we understand that the best way to ensure that these biases don't negatively impact others around us is through curiosity, which helps us keep an open mind. And by default, then leads to greater inclusion. So the question now is, what can we do to foster curiosity within the workplace and also outside? Well, let's get into that. For all my people leaders out there, you should be looking at leading with example or leading through example. For example, we have integrating curiosity into your team culture by adding it as a desired quality in job descriptions or as a metric in performance reviews. And also consider having it as a focus area for promotions. Secondly, you can also start promoting curiosity on a day-to-day basis by setting up recurring coffee chats with your team in a standardized way and making sure that during these coffee chats, you get to know your team's goals, challenges, and past experiences. Similar to what we just saw in the activity that we conducted, it's important to get to know everyone, both on a personal and also work aspirational level as well. Lastly, you can also start fostering diverse perspectives amongst your team by asking people to share their approach to a problem or to a solution. For example, during your next meeting, when someone proposes a solution, say, can you walk us through how you got there? And that will also promote learning from one another. And for those that are individual contributors or those applying for jobs, you can also be the messengers of curiosity by adding curiosity to your resume, to your LinkedIn profile, and also bringing it up during interviews. For example, asking the team, well, how do you promote curiosity and learning within your team and within the organization? Another thing that I love doing from an individual perspective is setting up networking goals. For example, whenever you go to an event or whenever you're joining a new organization, aiming to connect with X amount of people each week. One thing that I have done whenever I start at a new organization is setting up a coffee chat with one new colleague every week. I know we are all super busy, but it does really pay off. And it helps you also understand so much more about the organization itself. Oh, Melissa, I don't know if you might be on mute.
I was on mute. Thank you. Forgive my dog if she's barking. I was saying that we can't forget that practicing curiosity is not only important in the workplace, but also outside. Walt Disney has this quote, "When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do." Isn't that why we travel? Because we're curious about other cultures and way of life? Even close to home in our same country, we're curious about the other cities. I remember one of my first trips out of college, I went to New York City. My friend and I were staying in Soho and didn't have plans the first night we were there, but we were curious about the city. So we ended up restaurant hopping. And even though we didn't travel far from our hotel, we met so many people and had such a great time. To this day, it's possibly one of my favorite nights in New York. Consequently, I travel there quite often. Years later, the same friend and I had a very similar experience in Tokyo. But what we realized is that we weren't having the same experiences at home. At the time, it was Chicago. We weren't approaching people at home the same way we were approaching them when we traveled. We quickly learned that by asking questions instead of making statements or assumptions, we learned a lot about our hometown. By being curious about the people around us, we could easily build bridges instead of disagreements. And that's just one food for thought as we navigate such times of uncertainty.
I absolutely love that story, Melissa. And I think it touches upon the fact that we can take action right now within the current environment that we're in order to foster that curiosity and learn from people around us, even our significant others, which we see every day. When's the last time we asked them an open-ended question about, something like philosophy, things like that? So on that note, I actually want to do a quick poll, and I'm going to ask you to vote on which of these actions that we just ran through you want to commit to doing tomorrow in your workplace in order to foster that curiosity. So if we could please open up that poll. And if for any reason you don't see the poll coming up, feel free to just remember which option you're choosing. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll. And if we can display the results. And while we're waiting for that, I would love to hear from Melissa.
Yeah.
If you were running the poll or choosing within the poll, which one would you have chosen?
I don't know that we can see the poll, but I'll tell you that I use coffee chats all the time when starting my new role. It's a great way to meet people, and it's an excuse to say, hey, I'm new and I'm just learning about the company and everybody's job. And it helps me build the relationships that I need to get the projects moving later on. So I highly recommend that if you haven't tried that already.
Amazing. So now that we've closed off the poll, I want to actually take this commitment a step further and ask you all to do one last quick activity, which is related to using your phone. So if I could please ask you to take out your phones right now and please go to your calendar application.
Got it.
All right. So now that you're in your calendar, go to April 12th. 2 weeks forward. I think that should be a good date. And I want you to open up a new meeting. And in this meeting, I want you to title it Reminder to Foster Curiosity Through, and then type in the action that you just chose right now.
Done.
Perfect. And once you have done that, I just encourage you to continue to put reminders and stay committed to fostering curiosity within your team. As the cybersecurity queens and kings that we are, we need to lead through that example and bring consistent awareness to our actions in the workplace and also beyond, so that we're not letting biases negatively impact those around us. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And now we're going to pass it on over to the Q&A portion of the webinar. So please make sure you're adding questions on your left-hand side of the screen, and we'll go through as many as we can. Let's see. Do you see any questions that you would like to take, Melissa?
Let's see.
So I'll jump in with this one. There's a quick question in regards to biases. So would you consider reversed bias as bias? I often will not engage in discussion if I feel or assume biases are there.
That's a great question.
So that is a great question. And also, obviously, very dependent on the scenario. But I will say that it is a choice, end of the day, whether you want to engage in a conversation where you may not feel comfortable, because I think there will always be biases associated to any discussion. I would say if you will practice curiosity yourself and jump into that conversation, asking questions, I think that's a good way to break in, as opposed to making a statement or sharing, for example, well, I believe this is the way forward within this issue. I think Melissa kind of touched upon that briefly, that in this time of uncertainty, a lot of times it's better to just ask questions and understand other people's perspectives. I will also just quickly add that when there are biases that may be associated to you within a conversation, I think it's fair for you to just not engage in that conversation if you just don't want to go into that kind of educational realm and or talk about that topic if you don't feel comfortable. So I hope that helps. Melissa, if you want to add anything else.
No, I think you're right. Totally get it. There's another comment. I guess in my situation, I was the leader and the person I was thinking of is the leader now. So I've been trying to help them move forward. Sochi? Any thoughts on that?
So this one right here, I think it kind of reads to me,
I was thinking of
it almost sounds like this is someone that may not be as curious, or maybe is not practicing expanding the in-group, and that is now the leader. So if I'm reading the question correctly, this might be one of the scenarios where you are the team member and you want to foster that curiosity. I think that's a fair point, and also something we kind of cover from an individual perspective. I think I would promote that you enter with curiosity again. A lot of times we feel that others may be leaving us out, but it has sometimes nothing to do, I mean, I would say it always has nothing to do with us, but more so with that person or with that leader that may not be either thinking through how those biases may be affecting when they set up team meetings, when they have happy hours. I've been in that scenario before, and in my personal experience, I have just tried to create that connection with leaders or team members, even if they're not trying to do so with me, in order to foster a better relationship. Anything else that you would like to add?
That's a great point. I think it's hard not to take it personally, but one has, as you mentioned, one has to remember most of the time, 99% of the time, always. It really has nothing to do with oneself and really the other person. But I think engaging in curiosity and being curious about them will slowly help break those walls, as you mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that. And I just saw another quick question, and I can take this one. So the question is, how do you recommend scheduling coffee chats with coworkers? So I have always kind of messaged the coworkers or the colleagues first, even when I'm new to the company and they have no idea who I am. I think that's a good first way to break the ice and just say, hey, we have not had the pleasure of connecting. I just joined the firm. I would love to connect with you to better understand your role within the organization and also just to learn more about the company culture. I think that's always a great way to initiate and then also to propose scheduling a call during a time that works for that individual as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. We have another question. How can we foster curiosity with individuals who identify as private people? I fall into this category. I'm really shy with like a large group of people.
No.
Yeah. It's hard to believe, but I am. And so what works really well for me is one-on-one conversations. And the way I try to foster it with other people is I schedule those one-on-ones, even if it's just 15 minutes to check in with my colleagues and say, hi, we haven't chatted in a while. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Or, hey, I saw you on this project. I just want to offer some help, and start breaking those walls of behind the Zoom, right? Because it's so hard to have those conversations in Zoom.
I agree. I think something else that I've done where it falls into individuals that are private and also super busy, where sometimes like even getting a coffee chat is hard to schedule in. I have started joining the Zoom calls a little bit earlier and in hopes of catching them early enough, or sometimes we have team members joining later. So it just so happens that I'm there and the leader or my other colleague is there. And then we kind of start that small chat or talk before the actual meeting. And I've gotten to know some colleagues through that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think those are all of our questions. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for joining. We really appreciate you being here with us. I hope you found it helpful. Again, my name is Melissa Salem, joined with my colleague, Sochi. And find us on LinkedIn. We're happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn.